Hey guys, what's going on? Jeb here, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a little bit of technical analysis on Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency markets, because in yesterday's video, we discussed my opinions on what will happen to the Bitcoin market if we see Bitcoin go below the all-important level of support that we're currently trading just above of $6,000. So I figured I'd go ahead and follow that up with a video talking about what the likelihood is of Bitcoin going below that all-important level of $6,000 that we're currently trading just above. What's the likelihood of Bitcoin going below this level? Well, we're going to be discussing that in today's video. We're also going to be doing a little bit of technical analysis on the Ethereum over US dollar chart, because I want to talk about the massive sell-off that Ethereum has seen. We've seen about a 75% reduction in price in the recent downtrend that we've seen starting in the early parts of May. And there's also a very, very grim parity that we can draw between the Ethereum over US dollar chart and the Bitcoin over US dollar chart right now, which does not paint a very good picture for the future of Bitcoin coming into the next couple of weeks. But of course, that is just one scenario, one that we'll be discussing later on in today's video. But before we get into today's video, guys, if you enjoy the video, as always, definitely consider dropping a like, hitting that subscribe button, and smashing the notification bell, guys. It does help out the channel if you do it, and I would be appreciative if you did it. But without much further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Bitcoin is currently trading at around $6,275, and it's currently in a very interesting pattern right here. We drag the chart out. What we're going to see, if I get rid of some of these trend lines, I'll bring those back up in a second. What we currently see is that Bitcoin is currently trading in this kind of consolidation pattern, this triangle pattern, this pennant, this bear flag, whatever you want to call it. It's in a consolidation pattern right now, and this is really going to be the subject of today's video. I want to talk a lot about that later on in the video, but first things first, of course, we have to do our crypto market recap. So let's go ahead over to CoinMarketCap and do just that. Like I said just a second ago, Bitcoin is trading just around $6,300. CoinMarketCap, if we give it a refresh, is listing Bitcoin is trading at $6,312, and with daily volume of around about $3.8 billion, and is down by about 0.7% over the last 24 hours. Ethereum, on the other hand, is down by over 7% in the last 24 hours. We saw Ethereum trading at around, I think it was $216 just a couple of days ago when I did an altcoin technical analysis video. You guys can watch that video in the top right if you're interested in my opinions on the altcoin market. But Ethereum has lost a lot of value, especially in the last couple of months, which is one of the reasons I want to talk about it in today's video. But if we check the altcoin markets right here, we do see one outlier. We see Emmercoin being up 50%, but the majority of the altcoin market is not doing all that hot, kind of following in the footsteps of the big dog altcoin Ethereum. We see, was that 8 double-digit losers in today's video. And we don't see a whole lot of green. We can see all of the green here in the market on one screen. If we come back here and sort by and sort by market capitalization also, we do see that some cryptos like XRP, Bitcoin Cash, EOS, Litecoin, some big names in the cryptocurrency space are not exactly doing all that well today. And market capitalization has fallen to a yearly low of around $191 billion. We've seen total market capitalization pull back to this level once before, and we did see a bounce right around here. We saw it pull back to around this level right back over here in mid-August, when we did get a bounce down here. Currently, we're pulling back to a very, very, very similar level, and that's definitely one thing that would indicate that we may see a bounce here. That's definitely not a very strong level of support, though, guys. Let me go ahead and be clear. Just because we're going back to a level that we've previously seen on total market capitalization levels, that is not a very big indication of a bounce, but it is something that I figured you guys may want to be aware of. Another thing that we want to look at is the dominance chart, because this really paints the picture with Ethereum that I wanted to talk about in today's video. As you guys can see, over the last several months, since the beginning of May, I've talked about the Bitcoin dominance a lot. I haven't talked so much about Ethereum's dominance, and I want to do that today, because if you look at Bitcoin's dominance, it's been gradually rising here ever since the beginning of May. And an interesting thing happened here at the beginning of May. Bitcoin actually started a new downtrend. Like I said, if you go watch that altcoin technical analysis video, I talk a lot more about Bitcoin dominance and market dominance in general, but essentially that Bitcoin's dominance started trending up right around here at the same time that we peaked out at $10,000, and a lot of that has to do with risk aversion in the market, in my opinion. And an interesting thing has followed that. As we can see, ever since around that time, but really starting just a couple of months ago, Ethereum's market dominance, which is represented by this line right here, this kind of purple line, whatever color that is, I'm colorblind like you guys know. As you guys can tell, that has been trending down, especially in the last month or so. Ethereum has been losing a lot of market dominance. It's down to it's down under 10% market dominance at this point, when the all-time high for Ethereum's market dominance was quite a bit higher. Let's go ahead and go out to the all-time, and we're going to see Ethereum at one point held a quite substantial amount of market dominance, up very, very close to Bitcoin. It held nearly 30%, actually over 30% market dominance back over here not that long ago, just a little over a year ago. Ethereum had nearly as much dominance as Bitcoin did, and currently these two charts have never been this far apart, at least not in a very, very long time. Like I said, we're going to be talking about Ethereum a little bit more later on in the video, but let's go ahead and get into the main point of today's video, and then we'll get back into Ethereum later on. Is Bitcoin going to break below the all-important level of support of $6,000? Well, there's a lot of different things that we have to talk about when we're analyzing a question like this. We have to look at support and resistance. We have to look at fundamentals. We have to look at all kinds of different things. What are the couple of things that we really need to be focusing on the most? Well, the first thing that we have to look at, of course, is that $6,000 has held as a very, very strong level of support all throughout 2018. We haven't really had consistent highs. Of course, we did have a downtrend that we were getting consistent resistance on right here. Consistent resistance, that's a fun thing to say. We have seen a downtrend right here that Bitcoin has been trading around quite a bit and that we are currently above, thankfully. But at the same time, we have seen a very, very strong level of support. We haven't seen a very well-defined level of support on a level of resistance, in the long-term charts here on Bitcoin. But we have seen $6,000. $6,000 in the area surrounding it, the zone surrounding it, has been very, very strong for the Bitcoin market. We defined it back down here on February 6th when we first pulled back here. We saw Bitcoin pull back to around $6,500. And then in the last couple of pullbacks, we saw Bitcoin pull back to $5,750, down to the $100 billion market cap level. And then recently we saw Bitcoin fall down to a little below $6,000, down to around 5860 or somewhere around that level. But what we haven't seen is we have not seen a break below $6,000. It has managed to hold 4 times. Now, if you guys go back and you look on the channel, I was expecting that more than likely we were going to break this on our 4th attempt. I was expecting that 3rd time was not going to be the charm because we held support here, but 4th time was going to be not the charm, depending on whether you're shorting or going long. I did expect that we were probably going to break it right here simply because we had put so much into the level of support that is $6,000. But instead of doing that, what we actually saw is that Bitcoin set technically a higher high, but basically a similar high. I said high bottom. It set technically a very slightly higher low, but in reality, it's basically a equal low right here. This was right here. This was technically a higher low, but in reality, they were so very close that we can basically call that an equal low. But what we haven't seen, like I said, is we haven't seen Bitcoin go below $6,000. And since we saw it got support here, that really reinstated my trust in the level of $6,000. And like I said, I talked about in yesterday's video as to some of the reasons why we probably won't break $6,000. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily think that we're going to break it right here. And one of the reasons is just because it's managed to hold so many times, and that I think a lot of people are very, very confident with it. I think the bulls are very, very confident with it. And another thing we have to talk about is mining, because the cost of mining is hovering around that $5,000 to $6,000 region, depending on where you're mining, depending on electricity cost, depending on hardware costs, etc., etc., etc. But mining cost isn't much below actual market value for Bitcoin right now. And if Bitcoin does start going down and pushing some of these massive centralized mining pools into unprofitability, I'll tell you what they're going to do. They're probably going to start buying the crap out of Bitcoin, probably with leverage, and push Bitcoin back up above $6,000 and hold our head above $6,000 simply to keep their own interests afloat, simply because they don't want to go out of business. This is the way capitalism works, guys. It's a beautiful thing, really. And it does have some not necessarily intended consequences where we see that Bitcoin is probably going to hold $6,000 down here, if not for technical reasons, probably because of manipulative reasons, because there are a lot of people and a lot of organizations, a lot of companies that have vested interests in Bitcoin not going below $6,000. With that said, of course, there are companies and organizations and entities that have had vested interests in Bitcoin going below $6,000, because in this bear market, as opposed to the 2015 bear market, we do have a lot of institutional money sitting on the sidelines waiting to get into the space. But at the same time, the people that are defending $6,000 are the ones that have been successful so far this year, haven't they? You got to keep that in mind. The people that have been wanting to push Bitcoin below $6,000 to date have not been successful. What's to say they'd be successful this time? I don't know, guys. Like I said in yesterday's video, what I'm expecting is about a 50% likelihood that we trade sideways somewhere around $6,000 to $8,000 for the next like 3, 4, 5, 6 months into an accumulation phase, and then we kick off a bull run in the first part of 2019. If you guys are interested in that video, you can watch it in the top right. That's basically my opinion on the matter. And also in yesterday's video, I said that there's probably about a 25 to 35% chance that we do break below $6,000. I'm not going to say that there's not a chance that we do. I'm going to say with a pretty high degree of definitiveness that I don't know where I was going with that. I am going to say that there is a decent chance that we go below $6,000. I just don't think it's the most likely. I think that what is most likely to happen is that Bitcoin trades sideways and we keep getting support down here and we kind of just flatline and bottom out down here. And one of the reasons I also believe that is, like I said, just because it's a very, very important level of support, guys. And since it's a very important level of support, it's going to be defended to the death by the bulls. If we do go below it, it would be catastrophic. And honestly, it'd be catastrophic for the short term, and honestly, maybe healthier for the long term. But anyway, guys, there's not a whole lot to talk about here other than what I've already laid out, other than the fact that it is a very, very strong level of support. I'll go ahead and show you guys a couple of other technical things on the short and long-term charts. One thing that we do have holding us above here right now is a long-term uptrend with a pivot point down here at around $800 back here in March of 2017, with a set point right here around $2,000 back here in July of 2017. And this uptrend actually connects with our price action right here. That's this uptrend right here. We also see an uptrend on the shorter term charts if we come in here to the 4-hour that connects our recent lows back over here at 57.50 and some lows back over here to our current price action. So those two levels are kind of holding us up and are probably what's keeping us above $6,000, because in this pullback here in the month of September, we haven't actually seen Bitcoin go back to $6,000 yet. But nevertheless, those two levels do seem to be part of what is at least holding Bitcoin up in the short term. Another thing that we want to talk about is the really short term for Bitcoin here on the hourly chart. I talked about this pennant pattern, this kind of consolidation pattern earlier on in the video, and I do think it's a very, very important thing to keep in mind, because what it kind of looks like is it does kind of look like a bear flag. It does kind of look like Bitcoin's come up here to around $7,400, jumped off a cliff, and then decide to go into this kind of pennant consolidation pattern. And a lot of times when you see a pattern form like that, a lot of times it can be followed up with another fall to the bearish side. It a lot of times does result in a bearish breakout of the pennant that it's currently in, or this consolidation pattern. Whatever the case may be, this is a very well-defined consolidation pattern, and these two trend lines cross not that long from now. In about 3 days, they do cross, and we're going to see some big price movement moving out of this consolidation pattern, and I do think it is going to be a big event for the cryptocurrency space. The only question is, are we going to break bullish, or are we going to break bearish? And I'm going to throw that question back to you guys. Tell me in the comments section down below, what do you guys think? Is Bitcoin going to break bullish out of this pennant and perhaps do a reversal, try and go up a little bit, maybe come back up here towards resistance at $7,400? Or are we going to break bearish below it and go below $6,000? Or indeed just test $6,000 and get support there? As always, guys, I love hearing your opinions in the comments section down below. Now that we're done with our Bitcoin TA, let's go ahead and talk, let's go ahead and talk about Ethereum a little bit. Or we can try anyway. Apparently I can't speak today. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about Ethereum today, because there's a lot that I've been wanting to talk about with Ethereum. The first thing is that as far as I recall, you guys probably know if you've watched the video, if you've watched the channel for quite a while, I got into the crypto space, and a lot of people are surprised by this for some reason. I got into the crypto space on July 31st of 2017. I was here for the majority of the ending of the 2017 bull run. I was here for the hype cycle. I was here for all that. But I haven't really been in the cryptocurrency space for very long, just a little over a year. A lot of people don't expect that from me, but it's true. And as far as I recall, and as far as the charts are telling me right here, I don't remember ever seeing Ethereum this low. And this is a very nostalgic thing to say. My nostalgia has absolutely nothing to do with the technicals of Ethereum anyway, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you anyway. Seeing Ethereum under $200 is something that I haven't seen in a very long time, and actually based on the charts, it doesn't look like I've ever seen it, because I don't recall exactly what the price was when I first got into the space, but right here on Bitfinex, it looks like it was trading just a little under, or just a little above where it currently is. So this is actually the lowest price I've seen on Ethereum since I got into the space. And I'll tell you what, guys, I really do think Ethereum deserved at least some of this valuation that it had when it ran up here to $1,400. Was it worth a full $1,400 at the time? No, absolutely not. That's why Ethereum crashed so hard, and crashed just about as hard, if not harder, than Bitcoin has. Ethereum did not deserve $1,400 valuation. But there is something that's telling me it doesn't deserve a $180 valuation either. I think we've gone from one extreme to the other, and I am going to be looking to scale into some cryptocurrencies and some altcoins like Ethereum in the coming days and weeks. With that said, I am currently starting to scale into Ethereum, but I'm not scaling in a very big way, because what we're seeing with Ethereum right now on the technicals is not all that promising. We saw some support here at around $200 flat, because we did see some price action trading around here, back over here, right over here, right over here. We also saw some trading around this region right over here. $200 is, of course, a big even. A lot of people like to trade around digits that have 2 zeros in them on the Ethereum chart, of course, and we did recently break below $200. Definitely not a bullish thing for the market, and I definitely don't technically see a bottom in sight for Ethereum. I do think it's coming, of course, and I do think it is a lot closer than it was, say, 3 months ago when it was back over here somewhere. And I do think Ethereum is probably going to get some kind of level of support in the next couple of months. But before I start going really ham into Ethereum and really start investing a lot of money into it, and the same thing goes for a lot of the altcoins, I do want to see them try and set a bottom, and I will keep you guys up to date on the channel as it relates to Ethereum and other altcoins setting a bottom that we could potentially start trying to trade. Now for the coup de grace of this video. I talked about earlier on in the video how there was a pattern on the Ethereum chart that was rather morbid for its, if you applied it to Bitcoin, it's not exactly a good thing to think about. And I'm going to go ahead and show you what that is. See how in Bitcoin, what we've seen in the last little while is what we saw. We saw Bitcoin run up to a new high, or well, not a new high, excuse me, a recent high up here of around $8,400, and then it pulled back, and then it went on another rally. It only got about halfway back up to that high, and then it decided to go and jump off the metaphorical cliff, of course. And what we've seen is that Bitcoin is currently in a pennant. It's currently in that consolidation pattern that we talked about earlier on in the video right here. And that's a very interesting thing when it relates to the Ethereum chart, because if we come back to the Ethereum chart and we put it on the daily chart, we see a very similar thing. Ethereum ran up to $1,400, pulled back to a very strong and well-defined level of support of about $380. Very strong, well-defined level of support. It was a very strong level of resistance back here in the bull market. Once we got above it, Ethereum went to the moon. We had support on it. We did see a bounce on it. But what happened is Ethereum had a second cool-off period right here, and it pulled back into a pennant. And from that pennant, it broke bearish, and then it broke key support at $380. And I'm going to tell you guys, that does look kind of analogous to the Bitcoin market, and that does look kind of foreboding for the next couple of days into the next couple of weeks for the Bitcoin market. What if the same scenario plays out for Bitcoin? What if Bitcoin has this pennant pattern and it breaks bearish out of it, and it comes down and it breaks established levels of support like $6,000, which in my opinion would be somewhat analogous anyway to $380 on the Bitcoin chart, or excuse me, on the Ethereum chart. Tell me in the comment section down below what you think about that. I'm not going to comment on that. Just because I see a pattern doesn't necessarily mean that pattern has any power, and just because I see something happening on the Ethereum chart doesn't necessarily mean the same thing will translate to the Bitcoin over US dollar chart. It was simply something that I wanted to throw out there, and it was simply something that I thought would be of interest to you guys. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this video. I do want to thank each and every single one of you for watching, as always. I do appreciate it. But that's going to do it for this video. Like I said, I want to thank each and every single one of you for watching, as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.